more than just exciting, but uh, yeah, you get me mixed up over here. Chaim. Okay, okay. So
Which character?
it's a very elaborate situation. The scenery is just with a fiery whatever. So you know what I mean. It's not the kind of thing that you would normally experience in your daily routine, but it's all described in very physical terms. For that matter, even at the miracles that took place in Mitzrayim, in and the splitting of the Yam Suf, these are all things that are all being described in very physical terms. Okay. A couple of weeks ago in Parshas Mishpatim, so now there we have some reference already about the vision of Hashem towards the ends of Mishpatim, which is a continuation of the narrative of Matan Torah. And then again in this Parsha, this the engagement between Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu, and the conversation that took place, and the requests that Moshe Rabbeinu made, they are all very interestingly. They speak about realities that are beyond the physical reality. To some degree, they're also, the terminology is physical terminology, but at the same time, in spite of that, you know that you're dealing with some deeper. I mean, it's clear that the simple pshat in the psukim are some deeper reality. So, like I say, I find that interesting because to me, that's actually a it's an exception. It's kind of like an exception. So to the rule of the Torah and whatever, it's I don't know. I just my sentiment. I have an interesting sentiment when it comes to that. So that's Parshas Ki Sisa. So before I get into some of the interesting things of Parshas Ki Sisa that I would like to speak about, I will again begin with the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe in Torah Or of this week. And this week, it's actually a short Maimer. It's only two Maimarim, maybe like three sides. Yeah, maybe two sides altogether. And the Maimer begins with a pasuk from Shir Hashir. Now, remember, Shir Hashirim, Shlomo HaMelech wrote Shir Hashirim, describing the relationship of Hashem with Bnei Yisrael, using as a metaphor the like we mentioned last week of Chosin and Akalo, and a wedding between Hashem and the love between Hashem and Bnei Israel. And the pasuk that the Alter Rebbe begins with, again, a pasuk from Shir Hashirim, Smoloi tachas leroishi v'yaminoi tichapkeni. So embracing is a demonstration of love, right? And this pasuk speaks about an embrace, but it's somewhat more specific, where smoloi, we reference to Hashem's left hand, so to speak, of course. Tachas leroishi is supporting the back of my head. V'yaminoi, and with his right hand, he embraces me. Okay? And right at the beginning here of Torah, the Alter Rebbe says something that is so typical in Chassidus and so typical in the Maimarim of the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe puts a very positive perspective to this pasuk, because usually when you speak about small, when you speak about the left, you speak about, it's generally a reference to that which is negative, okay? And usually, when it comes to negativity, especially in our relationship with Hashem, there is somewhat of a dechiyah, there's a pushing away. And indeed, it says, small doiche, the left hand is used to push away, the yaminai tichapkeni, the right hand, the yamin mikareves. Small doiche, yamin mikareves. The left pushes, and the right embraces. The right brings close. And that we know, of course, that in our relationship with Hashem, there are times when it seems that because of our actions, Hashem is kind of like, he's well, it's all part of discipline, but in the process of the discipline, there is a pushing away. Okay, so that's the small deicha. In this pasuk says the Alter Rebbe, both the yamin, which naturally is the bekareves, so not only is the right hand embracing, but the small, even the left hand is also tachas roshi, behind my head, supporting my head. Okay, it says the Alter Rebbe that, and this is what I mean, is like the real Hasidus, that there is no small that's doicha that pushes away. Only on the surface it may look like you're being pushed away, but it's not chas v'shalom being pushed away. It's part of the process of even bringing you closer. Okay, and therefore, when a yid chas v'shalom he strays away from Hashem, so on the surface he strayed away, and but ultimately it's a beginning point for becoming even closer to Hashem. And that's what this pasuk is referencing. The fact that there's a small is very amazing. It's different. It's very special. It's very unique. It's part of the process, and in a sense, it's even a greater kirub. It's a greater bringing close than just Yemina Techapkeni. So, just I was thinking, so, sometimes it's all based on the fact that the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Bnei Yisrael is absolute. It's absolute. And there's nothing that can actually change that. So way down deep in the core, that relationship is strong. That relationship cannot in any way be severed. It's absolute. Okay. But then on the surface, and this is just how the reality of how Hashem created us, is that on the surface, there could be things that take place and things that happen that seem to be not quite in line with a good and a healthy relationship. We are doing things that are upsetting Hashem. Okay? So ultimately, though, because this is an inseparable bond, even if there is, as a response to our lacking, to our doing something that's perhaps improper, because the foundation is an inseparable bond, that itself ultimately leads to even a more strengthening of that bond. Okay, so this is the point the Alter Rebbe makes just at the beginning of the Maimer, that here in Shir Hashirim, when we speak about Hashem embracing us, He doesn't just embrace us in the Yamin, He embraces us also with this small, right? Which seems to be counterintuitive, but ultimately, that, says the Alter Rebbe, is the way it is. Okay? So, about this inseparable bond. So, I would like to point out a couple things in this week's Parsha. And if you look at your screen, we'll see that Hashem, when He is speaking with Moshe Rabbeinu, and Hashem, of course, expresses his great disappointment, and Moshe Rabbeinu immediately asks Hashem to forgive the Bnei Yisrael. And what's interesting is that in that conversation that took place, Hashem, Hashem said, "Listen, you know what I mean? They sinned. They deserve to have the ultimate small to be pushed away. It wasn't just a little sin; it was a very big and a serious sin, right?" And yes, he should forgive the Bnei Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu's response. And we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was pretty upset himself, right? Because Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came down from the mountain and he saw what happened, he took those luchos and he immediately broke them. Okay? So Moshe Rabbeinu was obviously very upset. But at the same time, he was upset with what Bnei Yisrael did. But in his conversation with Hashem, he was absolutely 100% supporting the side of Bnei Yisrael. Last week, we spoke a little bit about the difference between Moshe and Aaron, that Moshe was the one who represents the Chasam Hashem, so he's bringing them the Torah, which is the absolute and the ultimate truth, right? And I think the term I used last week is sometimes the truth could be brutal, right? But that's just the way it is. And it doesn't seem to be very sympathetic. Aaron represents the Shoshvinin, the Malka, the Matronisa, I'm sorry, he escorts the Bnei Yisrael. He's coming from their perspective, and the whole Parsha, you see very much that when they wanted, the whole thing started, was Aaron was trying to somehow placate and to somehow work together with Bnei Yisrael. He didn't just immediately reject them, right? So that was Aaron. But that would be in the relationship between Moshe with Bnei Yisrael and Aaron with Bnei Yisrael. Moshe was kind of like strict. He was bringing them the way it is, okay, putting down the law, so to speak, and to some degree not showing a lot of sympathy and flexibility. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. Aaron, on the other hand, was different. But that's in the relationship with Bnei Yisrael. When Moshe Rabbeinu is talking to Hashem, however, he absolutely 100% takes the side of Bnei Yisrael. Immediately, instantly, without any hesitation. And here we have the pasuk where Moshe Rabbeinu tells Hashem that im tiso chatosam, I'm reading right here, if you could forgive their sin, okay, that's okay, fine. But when ayin, if somehow you cannot, I do not want to be part of your Torah. Ashek Asafta that you wrote. Those are very, very strong words, okay? Normally, when we speak about Moshe Rabbeinu and Torah, right, are almost synonymous. They're almost synonymous. It's called, actually, Torah's Moshe, the Torah that was taught to us by Moshe. So generally speaking, Moshe and Torah are synonymous, but apparently not completely and not 100%, because it came to protecting and to defending Bnei Yisrael. What did Moshe Rabbeinu say? If you, Hashem, cannot somehow find a way to forgive them, then I do not want to have any part of this Torah, because as far as I'm concerned, Bnei Yisrael actually stand above even the Torah. Okay? So that's that part of that conversation. Now, so this is Moshe Rabbeinu defending Hashem. Hashem, actually, if you look at later, Hashem says, okay, fine, I will forgive them. But there's a price to be paid, right? But however, I can forgive them, but I cannot accompany them into Eretz Yisrael, right? But rather, I will send my malach, my angel. Okay? This, as you go through the Parsha, we see that that was not good enough for Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu said, no. Not only that, he says no at the end, and this is it's whatever. It goes to later in the Parsha. We see that Moshe Rabbeinu insists, right? It's a little bit later. It won't help to scroll down, I don't think. Maybe it will. Oh, unless you went to this, you went to the okay, good. But in any case, so we see that Moshe Rabbeinu insisted that Hashem actually should go with the Bnei Yisrael, not only through a malach. And then we find that Moshe Rabbeinu actually took it even another level, because something Moshe Rabbeinu asked, it's not something that Hashem had removed, but it's something that Moshe Rabbeinu asked, and that will be v'deflinu aniva amcha, that Hashem should always consider Bnei Yisrael as being apart, as being somewhat separate from all other people. Okay? So this is just an indication of the Moshe Rabbeinu in the way that he engaged, in the way that he protected Knesset Yisrael when in his dialogue with Hashem. Okay. I want to reference because the next screen here is where Hashem is telling Moshe that he should now, since he broke the luchos, he has to go up and he has to bring a new set of luchos. But in this case, I want you to carve out 2 new stones, like the first one. You bring them up to the mountain, and then I will write the luchos on the stones that you make. So here Rashi is just explaining very simply, why did Hashem say Psol Lecha? And I'm going to read the Rashi. Asher Ata Shibarta Rishonis. You're the one who broke the first ones. So therefore, Ata Psol Lecha Cheres. So it's up to you to now make the new ones. Okay? And Rashi here brings a mashal to explain this whole thing. Okay? What is the mashal? So the mashal is a famous medrash. And I'm going to, Mirz Hashem, I'm going to share with you a sikha that I was privileged to be present. It was on the Farbrengen that takes place before Hakafes on the night of Simchas Torah, in which the Rebbe references this medrash. So what does the medrash say? Before I get to that, so on a deeper level, so we're talking about the second luchos here, and the second luchos, it's almost as if it had to happen. And when I say it had to happen, it's almost, you can compare it to the chet of Adam Harishon. So it's brought down. I actually saw it just recently, but what happened when Hashem created the world? He had in mind that the world should be like a Gan Eden, right? And he put Adam Harishon. He created Adam, and he put him in this Gan Eden, in a perfect world, right? And then shortly, even before Shabbos began, this was like Friday, and before Shabbos, already Adam Harishon, he sins. Okay, and because he sinned, he's kicked out of Gan Eden, and this becomes the story of the world, of our lives, and of history. Okay, history is post the sin of Adam Harishon. And in a sense, we are paying the price at Hayom Hazeh because, as a result of this sin, the realities of our lives are what they are, and they would not have been had we been still in a state of Gan Eden. Okay, but it does say that this is a sin. Of course, it was a sin, and it's kind of a little hard to wrap your brain around what this means. What I'm about to say is that, but it had to happen, right? Ultimately, Hashem says, don't let it happen. But then it happens, and then we have to somehow understand that ultimately it had to happen, because ultimately the kind of world that will become even closer to Hashem is only that kind of a world where, like Alter Rebbe said in this Maimer, there's a small way. There has to be some kind of a pushing away, so to speak, so that we come back even stronger than before, which is why ultimately the small, even the left hand, which is generally for pushing away, is also actually holding us and embracing us. And a point that I didn't make actually is that if you look carefully at the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, it says small letachas leroishi. Where's the small? The small is under the head, whereas the yamin is embracing the body. What is the highest element of a person's body? It's of course his head, right? And here we see that even though the yamin is bringing him closer and embracing, but it still has its limits. And the small, when it goes through this process where first there's a small and you drift away and you come back, it's actually elevating the highest levels of your being. So it's as if that it's this kind of thing where it's not supposed to happen, but then when it happens, it's actually ultimately the way it had to be. Likewise, when it comes to the luchos, so yeah, Hashem did not intend to give a second pair of luchos, but the second pair of luchos, in a sense, actually represents the new reality, like the post-Adam Rishon, or for that matter, we could also say now the sin of the Ega, the sin of the golden calf. And therefore, part of that process is that, okay, I'm not giving you these luchos. If I give it to you, then, chas v'sholom, the same thing could happen. But just as in the process of tshuva, which brings a person back from a state where he engaged in activity for which he deserved to be pushed away, right? He has to initiate, and he has to somehow find his way to claw his way back, right? And only then it realizes its deeper purpose. And that's why perhaps Hashem is telling Moshe, no, I can give you another set of luchos, but then they won't be yours. And if they won't be yours, it will not incorporate that element of you, right? Not me, I'm going to with my right hand embrace you. I want that it should be small, right? And therefore you deserve to be pushed away. And somehow you on your own, you're going to find your way back. And only then do we realize the great effect of that process. Okay. What's the mashal? So the mashal is that a king had to go away. He had to go away. He went overseas. He left his bride with the maidservants. Now, the maidservants are not of the highest quality of people, right? They're not used to refined behavior. So therefore, because she was hanging out with the shvachos, with the maidservants, so people began to speak badly against her, right? Oma Shushvina, here you have the word Shushvina, right? What does the English say? The bridesman, the person appointed to defend the bride. Okay, that's the Shushvina. That's the one that was accompanying the bride, right? So he was there, getting her ready for the eventual wedding that will take place with the king. And what did he do? The king already wrote the contract, the ksuba, right? If it's true that she engaged in improper behavior, right, as the rumor was, then that would be terrible. You are engaged to the king and you go and you engage in such behavior. And it's, if in the Mashal, in the Medrash, it doesn't say that she necessarily did, she was not necessarily guilty, but just by association, that's something you have to be very careful. You're the Arusa, you are the one who was meant to marry the king. So, how do you even engage in such behavior for which people could even spread such rumors? I'll mention that Rabbi Rosenblum, Olav Shalom, so he was my teacher for a number of years, and I remember he once said something to someone about their behavior or whatever, and everybody in the class was kind of like defending him. The Rosenblum. I don't think, I don't know who said that. It didn't. That's not what happened. So everyone said, let me tell you a story. Says one time the boys came to Cheder in the morning, and the Rabbi, these were days when you still can give like a little slap on the hand or whatever, and he went over to one of the Talmidim and boom, right? And the Talmud looked up at the teacher. He said, well, Rabbi, what did I do? I just kind of sat down on my seat. I took out my chumash. I didn't do anything wrong. So the Rabbi said, I heard in shul this morning that yesterday at the bar mitzvah that the whole class was at, that you did not really conduct yourself the way a boy learning in cheder, a yeshiva boy should conduct himself. So the child said, but Rebbe, it's not true, right? And the rest of the Talmidim said, no, we were there, it's not. And the teacher said, I didn't say you behaved. I said, I heard in shul this morning that you did not behave well. Right? So what am I supposed to do? He says, he says, if you would have actually, the fact that people are saying that you did not behave well, that already is a problem. Okay? So even though there are rumors about a person, and it's not true, but you have to make a cheshbon hanefesh. Why are there even these rumors? Right? So that's already an issue. And this is what the teacher was teaching the child. You have to make sure that you behave in a way that people won't even say that your chas v'shalom are misbehaving, whether it's true or not. Okay. Anyway, so here you have in this mashal, it was just a rumor that went out, and yet that's really not good. It's a bad situation. So what did the Shoshvina do? He went and he tore up the ksuba. And if the king comes back and he hears these rumors and he says that okay, you're worthy of death, so he's going to come and defend her and says, "Adayin eno ishtacha." 1 second, she's not your wife yet, right? Anyway, he calmed down the king. Whatever she did improper, it wasn't her, it was the shvaches, and it's and he forgave her. So so now you have to write a new ksuba because the first one was ripped. So you are the one who ripped it. You go find another one. And I'll write, but you have to bring the paper, the parchment, which is kind of interesting, right? I mean, in this marshal, what the king can't afford the parchment to write another ksuba, but he was making a point. And says the Rashi, Kena Melech Zakadosh Baruch Hu. The Melech, the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hashvaches elu eruv rav. The truth is, and here's it's an interesting part of the history of the Exodus of Bnei Yisrael, is that there were elements amongst the Bnei Yisrael called the Eruv Rav, who were not really originally from Bnei Yisrael, and they joined. And again, this was Moshe Rabbeinu's decision to include them. It's like the process of Gerus. And unfortunately, because of their background, they what's it called? They were a bad influence on the whole. Like, where did the Yidden even get the idea to make this egel? It was not something that they were familiar with, And when you read the Parsha, like you wonder, like, what is going on over here? And here we have a medrash where the medrash makes reference to the fact that they were influenced by people who did not have the same background that they had. And the Shushvin, who's the protector, right? Zemoshe, Arisosi Shalakadosh Baruch Hu, Yisrael, and who's the Arusa? That's Yisrael, and therefore it says, Psolacha, you have to now make it. Here we have the Medrash that's actually saying in conflict with the Zohar, because the Zohar says the Shushvin is of Moshe is the Shushvin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's Aaron, that's the Shushvin of the Knesset Yisrael. But like I said, that's when Moshe Rabbeinu was dealing with the Yidden and he's bringing the Chassan to them. But when he's dealing with the Chassan himself, Moshe, his function flips, and he becomes the Shushvin of the Bnei Yisrael to protect them, and that's the story in the Medrash, which explains why Rashi tells us why the pasuk says that Moshe Rabbeinu himself should carve out the luchos. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you the amazing Fabrengen Masicha that I myself was very fortunate to be a part of. So I was at the Oyel a few weeks ago, just to give you a little idea about this Sikha. So there was a gentleman, a bacher from Morristown. It turns out that he was 2 weeks before his wedding, but he was accompanying 2 teenagers to the Oyel. These 2 teenagers were from South America. I don't remember exactly which country. And they were part of C-Teen. And there was a C-Teen camp in the summer. And this Bacher from Morristown was a counselor at the C-Teen camp here in the States. And these 2 boys were there. And at this camp, and that's how he knew them. And now they were visiting, and I'm not sure why they had come. This was not last week's C-Teen big event at Times Square. This was was maybe a month ago. And he was bringing them to the Ayah. Okay, 2 typical teenagers, not from family, but whatever, just amazing. just their what I call their whole attitude. They even went to the mikveh before, and you could tell. I happened to be in the mikveh, when they came, and I what's it called, and you could tell that these kids, there was probably maybe the first time they were in the mikveh. Sometimes I wonder whether it was a good idea for them to suggest they should go to the mikveh, but they were perfectly happy. And then before they went into the oil, and before they even wrote the pidyon. So he was learning with them. I went and I was davening in the tent in the Ihil, and he was sitting one table away from me, and he was learning with them the Tanya of the day. Now, I don't remember. I could probably go if I had time. I could go look and I'll remember which Tanya portion it was. But somewhere in learning with them, he mentioned the sikha that I'm about to tell you that took place on Simchas Torah. Um, So I was kind of eavesdropping, and I was really like the guy was so full of chayas, and he was, the way he was interacting with these two kids, I was really impressed, very impressed. And these two kids were so sincere. It was whatever. It warmed my heart. It just warmed my heart. Anyway, I heard him, and I overheard him telling him about the sikha. So at one point, I walked over to him and I said, I was at that sikha. I was there. So he was not with these two guys exactly at that point, and he got so excited. He looked at me. He says, "What? What? Really?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, I was there. I was there. Tell me about it. Tell me about it." I said, "Well, you did a good job. You actually repeated the sikha very well." And he calls over these guys and he says, "Guys, here's a rabbi, this chassid here. He was there. He was at that sikha." They looked at me. These two guys says, "You saw the Rebbe?" They were like, "You actually saw the Rebbe, right?" Anyway, so these are just things that happen, and we have to stop and think and contemplate what we just experienced. But let me tell you the sikha that happened. Simchas Torah is when we finish reading the Torah. When we finish reading the Torah, of course, on Simchas Torah, it's the one Parsha that we don't read on a Shabbos. If I'm not mistaken, Simchas Torah actually can never be on a Shabbos. Loi adu rosh. Right, Simchas Torah could be on Shabbos. That's not true. Not true. Not true. Take it back. But in any case, we
Shmini
read.
Atzeres could be Shabbos. I don't remember ever Simchas Torah being Shabbos.
Of course, it could be
Shmini
Shabbos.
Atzeres could be Shabbos,
No,
like it was this
no,
past year.
no. Simchas Torah could be Shabbos. It could be Shabbos because you could have 3 days of Yom Tov. You could have Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. Oh, Shabbos.
Right.
Wait,
Shmini
wait,
Atzeres
wait,
could be
wait.
Shabbos. This year, past year, it was like that.
Right. It could. Okay, whatever. In,
It's like
any
it's interesting. They
in
said
any case, it
bracha is
doesn't
only
matter.
parsha we
The
cannot lay on
last,
Shabbos.
the last parsha, Zeis
Bracha can never be laid on Shabbos.
Habracha. The last parsha is always read on Simchas Torah, whether it's Shabbos or not.
No, but it's never Shabbos.
What?
And only in Eretz Yisrael it could be Shabbos, but outside Eretz Yisrael, it's never Shabbos.
Right. Because the first day, right. So Loi Adu means that it cannot be Shmini Atzeres
Cannot be
cannot be
Friday.
Friday. If
Cannot be
Shmini Atzeres
Sunday,
cannot be Friday, so
Wednesday, or
Simchas
Friday.
Torah. Okay, good. Okay, but yes, thank you. Anyway, Simchas Torah could be Shmini Atzeres could be on Shabbos, and then Simchas. Yeah. Okay. In any case, being that it was the last, we finished reading Zeis Bracha, and the Rebbe began in this Fabrengen. At one point, the Rebbe starts speaking about the very last Rashi in Chumash. So the psukim leading up to the last pasuk are all speaking about how great Moshe Rabbeinu was, right? And what a Navi was, that he spoke with Hashem panim el panim, and all of the oisais, and all of the wonderful miracles that he facilitated in doing Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? And it goes on for about 3 psukim of mentioning the what's it called, the great virtues of Moshe Rabbeinu. And then it comes to the last pasuk, and the last pasuk, I don't know, my brain is blanking. What's the last pasuk in Chumash? How does it begin? Okay, here we go.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the Rashi. That's the Rashi. So Ulchol Hayod HaChazaka, and all of his great Yod HaChazaka, his mighty hand, right, that Moshe Rabbeinu did, and this is like building up a couple psukim. There we go. Okie doke. So yeah, okay. So can we move this so I can see? Okay. Lekom oy David Yisokim Moshe Yadu Hashem Panim Panim. They would never rise the rose, whatever. There was no other Navi like Moshe that he knew Hashem face to face. The Chola Oises, Vahamoivsim Asher Shloche, all of the signs and the great miracles Asher Shloche Hashem Lasis that Hashem sent him to do in Eretz Mitzrayim, the Parei, L'Chol Avodav, L'Chol Artzei. So, can we get Rashi here? No?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. So, Rashi tells us what that's a reference to. And the Isis and the Moses says Rashi go down a little bit. No, Rashi doesn't tell us here. Okay. But then when it comes to L'Kol Hayod HaChazaka, L'Chol HaMeira HaGodol Asher Osa Moshe Le'enei Kol Yisrael. The great hand, his Yod HaChazaka was what? Shekibel es HaTeira B'luches B'Yadav. He accepted the Torah and the Luches with his hand, and all of the Nisim and the Gvuros that he did, and all of this he did Le'enei Kol Yisrael. He did it before publicly that everybody could see the things that he said. Comes Rashi, and Rashi says Le'enei Kol Yisrael. That's a reference to something specific. What is it? It's what happened in this week's Parsha. That when he was coming down from the mountain and he heard what was going on and what happened and the Maisa Egel, right? What did he do? So these are the words of Rashi. Nisa oili boy. He did it without any hesitation. Okay? The English says his heart stirred him up to smash the tablets before their eyes. Right? So that's what it means, Le'enei Kol Yisrael, right before their eyes. Shenamar, because when Moshe Rabbeinu was recounting this whole thing in Chumash Devarim, he used that same term and he said, V'ashabreim le'enechem, and I broke them right before your eyes, so that you should, I guess, see the severity of what you just did, right? So Nasai Libai, it was an uplift the heart, literally. It means, I guess the best way to say that is he did it unhesitantly. Hesitant. He didn't hesitate even for a second. And he broke it right before their eyes, right? This, says the Rebbe, is at the culmination of all the great things that he did. All of the great mighty hand, and all the Nisim and the Gevores and all the things that he did. And Le'enei Kol Yisrael, rather than to say that Le'enei Kol Yisrael is a reference to the things that he did before, which would be the simple pshat of the pasuk, Rashi says, no, Le'enei Kol Yisrael is a reference to even another thing that Moshe Rabbeinu did. That has nothing really to do with what it said before. It's a separate thing in its own right. And what is it? That he broke the luchas. Says that Rebbe, this is like the greatest thing that Moshe Rabbeinu could do, right? The Rebbe got very, very emotional. And the Rebbe said that from this Rashi, and the fact that Rashi decides to translate Le'enei Kol Yisrael not as describing what the previous great accomplishments of Moshe Rabbeinu, but that it's something in its own, and it's the culmination. It's a reference to the fact that this is actually the greatest milah. This is the greatest thing that you could say about Moshe Rabbeinu. And here the Rebbe was like literally living through these moments. And the Rebbe, at some point, the Rebbe Parsha couldn't speak. The Rebbe was crying. It was the Farbrengen before Simchas Torah. But the Rebbe was crying when he was saying these words. And he was describing as if you look at the Farbrengen, we felt that we're looking now at Moshe Rabbeinu, who's just standing right in front of us. the way the Rebbe connected to the emotions that Moshe Rabbeinu had to be going through at the time, right? It was literally like you felt that you saw the embodiment of Moshe Rabbeinu right in front of your eyes. And I remember some of the words that the Rebbe used. The Rebbe said, Moshe Rabbeinu, he knew what these luchos were. He appreciated them because it says that it was written by Eretz. Hashem himself wrote them, right? We didn't see Hashem writing them, right? We heard that Hashem wrote them. Okay, so we're very impressed. But Moshe Rabbeinu saw Hashem writing them. So he knew what it meant, that these luchos had the words that Hashem himself had written with his own hand. Whatever that means. But it's something big, there's no question about it. And Moshe Rabbeinu was right there and he saw that. So Moshe Rabbeinu, who of all people appreciated the luchos more than anybody else possibly could, right? What did he do? Without hesitation, he broke them. Why did he break them? He broke them in defense of Bnei Yisrael. Like we read in the Rashi before. That chas v'sholem, you cannot say anything, you cannot accuse them of doing something that was seriously wrong. By breaking the luchos, he eliminates the incriminating evidence, right? As we find that it's in other places, it says that the egel, it was so terrible that here I'm about to bring them to luchos that says, Ani Hashem Elokeichem and Li'ilcha Elokim Acherim, you should not have any other gods. And who am I going to give them to? The people who made the egel? They just made another god, right? So Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos. Hey, I can't hold these luchos. I cannot bring them. They're going to be used as incriminating evidence against who? Against Bnei Yisrael. And here the Rebbe went to elaborate. He said, was farayid? What kind of a yid is Moshe defending over here? A yid was a shayches egel, a Jew that has literally stooped so low that he was able to create an avodah zarah. Literally, within a month or a month and a half of having received the Torah on Har Sinai. And this is where the Rebbe Mamish broke down crying. For a yid that has chas v'sholem, he's nebach, he fell so low, and yet Moshe Rabbeinu, who he was the one who appreciated the luchos more than anyone else, he knew what it meant. And yet, to protect even that yid, Moshe Rabbeinu did not hesitate for a second. And he took those luchos and he said, if this is going to be used to incriminate Bnei Yisrael, I will not have any part of it. And he took them and he broke them. This, my dear friends, when I told it to this guy, like I mentioned before, he calls over these guys. He says, come here, guys, remember that? I was telling you about that Sikha. He was there. He saw it. There was the excitement that his son, this guy, was literally, it was heartwarming and it was amazing. Anyway, so this, my dear friends, is something that I would like to share with you. Again, I was there. You couldn't hear a drop. There's thousands of people there at the Farbrengen, and the Rebbe was speaking. And the Rebbe was like somewhere else. And the Rebbe was, like I mentioned, the Rebbe was crying as he was speaking these words. But here you see, by being a chassid of the Rebbe, you could actually understand what it means to have a Moshe Rabbeinu. I don't know if any other people have that schus, or have that opportunity to. I mean, I could say that when you learn Chassidus and you begin to appreciate, the relationship that we have with Hashem and so on and so forth, and you appreciate what the function of a Moshe Rabbeinu is, just like over and over, we keep on learning how he feeds us the Emunah, and he's the one who connects us with Hashem, and etc., right? But to be able to see it in front of your eyes, literally, being at the Farbrengen, and literally, you felt that you were looking at Moshe Rabbeinu, the embodiment of Moshe Rabbeinu, not just like we learn in Kabbalah, in Zohar it says there's an extension of Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation, and there's actually an extension of Moshe Rabbeinu within the heart of every Yid, and all of those wonderful, very inspiring words. But to literally experience it by seeing it in front of your eyes is something that I will be very grateful for my whole life. How fortunate are we that we have this Rebbe, And I know that all of you here listening to the Shiur did not have that opportunity. But there's a reason for that too. You will, Eretz Hashem. But I am more than happy in the meantime to share with you that which I was zeiche, that which I was privileged to see and to be part of. And this is what I have to share with you today. Anyway, so good Shabbos. Like I said, this was an amazing sicha, it was like it was surreal. It was surreal. It was mamish surreal. And then, after that, we went, you went to Akofis. It was like you were in a cloud. You were somewhere else. You were not, here. And then the Rebbe came down, and the Rebbe, would stand in his place by Akofis, and the Rebbe would be very, very freilach. And it was like, whatever. That itself was an experience. That itself was an amazing experience, being at the Rebbe's Akofis. But this particular year, I think it was Tashim Mem Gimel, really stands out for me as an experience that I had that I'm more than happy to share with you. Anyway, so